Why have you run for the role of DCO?
I've been involved in the union, sadly, since I got here, whether sort of indirectly through cheese grades or like when sitting on council by being an active part of it. So it seems sort of like a very logical progression way to go.
I think sometimes at first stage DCOs are roles, but not many students kind of know how to classify it. So how would you describe the role and responsibilities that come with it?
So first of all, I'd explain it to students. I mean, when people ask what I'm running for, I always just go, the one that sends the email, because that is the main public face. But there's a lot more to it than just type out an email once a week. You have to look after like the internal workers of the union as well, which I think is quite difficult sometimes to get across to students, like the amount of sort of structures and organising that you have to do in the role, because that's not as public facing as it could be, I think.
So you edit Cheese Grater. Cheese Grater likes to make fun of the union for being very bureaucratic.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would do if you were DCO to make it a little less bureaucratic?
I think that sometimes people use bureaucracy as a sort of like buzzword word without really understanding what it means. Like, if it's the sort of the choice between, you know, not telling somebody when you're doing an event or sending in speakers might make somebody feel unsafe and having less bureaucracy, I'd always want to go for the former.
Okay, so we're on to manifesto now. So one of the points that you put is that you want to provide fast access to professional legal advice. So can you tell us why you think there's a need for legal advice, why that's important?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite heavily based on my own experience, not going to lie. But what I think, so basically, you have this as well, before you publish, you have to be checked by the SAPs, and this often takes quite a while. Like, the DCO will often have to query other things, and I think just cut that out, get somebody who definitely knows what they're talking about, so the editors feel comfortable publishing what they want to publish, and it doesn't have to be checked by the same person who's featured in the article. So yeah, fast and professional legal advice I think is probably like an absolute must to have a properly autonomous student media.
Cool. You also talk about media training and workshops. Who do you envisage running these workshops, and how do you think they'll be structured?
So what I would like ideally is like a mix of, so either alumni from UCL, people who like I've got to know, I've been sort of a member of the NUJ, and I think the NUJ can provide a lot of like valuable resources to student journalists as well as for proper media in terms of their training. I mean, in my second year I had libel training with a member of the NUJ, and I would really like that to happen again and to be a lot more full on.
You talk about having set up a network for women in student media. How would you sort of make that into like a bigger thing?
Mm-hmm. So I worked on it with Susanna, who's the union women's officer, and it was publicised. It was publicised on Facebook and through the ULU Women's Campaign mailing list. I'd like to do a lot more sort of physical publicity, a lot more publicity through like UCLU communications channels, because we have got a really strong student media, and we've got like a varied student media, which is something that we don't find so much in the other University of London colleges. So yeah, publicise it through, you know, the most channels we can.
So as part of the manifesto, you said you want to minimise barriers to students and their union through providing multilingual information. Do you not think that maybe by having information in different languages was kind of promoting barriers to be for that?
No. So basically my advice is with that, I think that if you're coming to the union with a problem, like say your landlord's about to kick you out, I don't know what I want to do, you don't, or like you want to make policy, you don't want to then have to like wade through lots of quite bureaucratic English to work out how to do that. And a lot of our rights and advice stuff, which is about visas, like really ought to be in languages that's relevant to. I mean, I found, because I lived abroad last year, and I found that, like, although my German's pretty fluent, a lot of such bureaucratic stuff you just want it in your native language, because it's such a complicated process that you don't want to have to like think through sort of 2 stages of understanding it.
And then you're also saying that you're going to look at job shares for part-time officers. How did you envisage that working?
So it's an idea that I lately stolen from goldsmiths who first, and they're like big immigration officers, they allow job shares. So two people will run through it together. So it's not like you end up working with someone who's totally physically opposed to you, because that would just be incredibly unproductive. So yeah, you run through it together, you share the workload, share the communication, just share everything basically.
Obviously one of the big parts of this job is democracy. UCLU is particularly disengaged, and for some of the positions, you know, sadly, maybe happily for you, but sadly we do have only one candidate, particularly for the democracy position. So how, if you were elected, how would you aim to solve that?
Yeah, I feel like maybe for the next year I ought to refer to myself as democracy and communications officer if I get in the post. But I mean, so the way to engage more people to vote is to get more people to run. The way to get more people to run is to make them feel like they actually have a chance at, like that their union is something that they own, that they feel ownership of. And not to like, so you have to be visible, you have to communicate what's going on. You have to, it's the same sort of thing with general meetings. Like you get into this vicious circle where people go, no one's going to turn up and nothing's going to happen. So I won't go because no one's going to turn up, and then nobody turns up and nothing happens. You have to engage people at the first point and then stop the circle happening. And I think elections need to be publicised properly. You need to you can't just rely on people going to a thing for standing there, because if you're going there, you've probably decided that you're going to run and you just asked for a pizza. So you need to get people right at the start, and I think you also need to, we also need to sort of work with the wide deliberation group as well, and say, you know, what do people in the women's network, what from elections, good, why don't we stand? You need to actually talk to people about it rather than relying on the banner hung in front of the union.